So I come across this piece of code that we can see here, which is, it's supposed to be, I guess, Pythonic or cleaner. And really it boils down to, we've got this function, def check of A, and we're going to check this value of A. And basically it says here, there's only one line in this code. It says print, and then there's something here that gets printed. And this is considered to be Pythonic in a way that it prints even if this value A that gets passed into this function is an even value. A percentage 2 equals 0 is a very common pattern here. This little piece, if I can draw it, circle around it, this is quite a common pattern basically, but that's just checking if something's even. So basically it'll print even if this number, if this value A evaluates to being an even number, and otherwise it will print odd, else print odd. And really the question is because this is supposed to be quite Pythonic, and the person that puts this question is kind of like, well, you know, what's the answer? And I wonder if I've actually got the original question somewhere, which is, I think I do. We get these 4 answers, so I'm just going to write them down, and you can kind of like have a guess yourself what you think the answers are going to be. But basically, A is even, B, these are the options that you've got, is odd, C is an error, and D is none. So the question is kind of like, what's going to come out of this code? And you know, then we run the code here. So we're calling this function. We're literally just calling this function over here. So we do check, and we pass in the value 12 into this function. So in it goes. A becomes 12. So A is 12 here, and 12 divided by 2. So 12 percentage 2. Is looking for the remainder part. This percentage 2 means let's look for the remainder part, and the remainder part of 12 over 2 equals 0. There's no remainders, so because it's even, so it should, our guess, I guess, should be it's printing even because we get the even number. It's not going to throw an error. It's not. We think it's not odd, so we're quite sure it's not odd. We maybe are not sure if there's an error or not, so we could sort of like put a question mark on that. We're quite sure that it's even. And we believe that it's not none because there is something there potentially. So if you were trying to return the value, if you printed check 12, then you would get none, because this function returns nothing back. So there would be cases where it would be none, like effectively it's got return none. But we're not actually looking for the return of it. We're just running the actual function and it's executing this. So we could kind of like rule this one out. But anyway, that's what the original question is. And I was kind of like thinking, you know, this is Pythonic and it's supposed to be easier to read. So, you know, I'll put this into a little piece, you know, the same piece of code. So I'll copy it out. I changed the function a little bit, which is check new. And then I call check new here. So that's the equivalent of the function. But the reality is I actually just sort of like have to think about this. Now I save one line of code effectively over here. I save a line of code because I do the same thing. I actually should call this check old, because I'm not sure that this is easier. We just call it the old method over here. So check old. And I'll zoom in on this as well so that everyone can see the code a bit clearer. Plus, 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 plus. There we go. So this is effectively the function as it was written in the question, and you could do that. And then this is how you might have done it prior to being able to write something like this in Python and have it all evaluated on one line. But one of the things is that this is quite a large, I don't know if it's simplistic or not, or if it's easy enough, but kind of like, what is this actual object anyway that we're getting back? Here I know what I'm getting back. I'm going to get back a string, or not even, I'm not returning anything actually, but what's actually happening is I'm going to output a string, and over here I'm going to output a string. Now I guess maybe it is obvious if you've done a lot of Python, but these two things are actually equivalent. So if we run the code, I'll just hit F5 and we can run it and see down below. We get even in both cases. And in order to debunk this a little bit, and really it'd be a lot cleaner with a statement in it, so we could kind of like tidy this up, because first of all, both of these should be sort of like, I guess, are they floats or integers? We'll take integers. code for these should be typed into integers for a start. And then also over here, maybe like one thing that we can do is something like this, break it onto separate lines. So maybe we could have done this. That's clearer. Now you've lost your lines of, you've lost all of your advantage in terms of lines of code because you split it out onto 3 separate lines. But then it's become clearer. Maybe it's okay with a one-liner when you've got something very simple like this. But the reality is, I ask what this object actually is here, and the way to kind of like, or at least one thing that you can do is we can sort of like say x is equal to this entire object here, and then print the type of x. Now, x will either assume this type or this type effectively because these are the two outputs that come from it. So, and when we run this piece of code, so if we do F5 again, we'll get a little print somewhere. We'll get an extra bit here. We see that it's a class of a string, so we're always getting a string back. So, I guess this is really a question on, I mean, first of all, I don't know if you answered that question. Like, it really actually is, let's do a vote and see. Do a vote. You've seen this video. We've seen both of these both of these functions. Which one is actually clearer to you? Is it clearer to just have all of your code written in one line like this with an if and else on one line, or is it better to have this kind of like classic format where you've got if and then else in the classic pattern? Which one is easier to evaluate visually if you're like looking through your code? So put it like a yes or something like equivalent to that. Yes, I prefer this version, or no, I prefer the old one. So do you prefer the new version or do you prefer the older version of doing this type of thing in Python? Just put them down in the comments. It'll be interesting to see what people think on that. So that's really it. Thank you for watching.